Hi, and welcome to another video. You Muslims tell us Christians the Bible is textually corrupt and therefore not authoritative. But even from an Islamic point of view, is your claim correct? Well, you primarily quote Quran chapter 2 verse 79 when making that claim, because you know this is the only verse in the entire Quran that seems to suggest the Bible is physically and textually corrupt. So let's take a closer look at that before I make 5 points to refute your claim. Quran chapter 2 verses 78 to 79 says, وَمِنْهُمْ أُمِّيُّونَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ الْكِتَابَ إِلَّا أَمَانِيَ وَإِنْهُمْ إِلَّا يَظُنُّونَ. And there are among them, meaning the Jews, unlettered people who know not the book, meaning the scripture, but they trust upon false desires and they but guess. فَوَيْلٌ لِلَّذِينَ يَكْتُبُونَ الْكِتَابَ بِأَيْدِيهِمْ ثُمَّ يَقُولُونَ هَذَا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ لِيَشْتَرُوا بِهِ ثَمَنًا قَلِيلًا. Then woe to those who write the book with their own hands and then say, "This is from Allah," to purchase with it a little price. فَوَيْلٌ لَهُمْ مِمَّا كَتَبَتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَوَيْلٌ لَهُمْ مِمَّا يَكْسِبُونَ. Woe to them for what their hands have written, and woe to them for that they earned thereby. The first point we notice here is the statement, "And there are among them," meaning the Jews, "unlettered people who know not the book," meaning the scripture. If you think about it, the Quran here is actually claiming the availability and knowledge of the original contents of the biblical scriptures. Obviously, you cannot be ignorant about a scripture which has no existence. And we know it certainly did exist in Muhammad's time because today we have very early Bible manuscripts that predate Muhammad. So the Quran is saying the biblical scriptures not only existed in Muhammad's time, it also claims they were available to the Jews of Arabia because of these same words, "And there are among them," meaning the Jews, "unlettered people who know not the book," meaning the scripture, which implies, with the exception of these unlettered Jews, the other Jews did know the scripture because it was available to them. The words, "and there are among them," differentiate the Jews who did not know the scripture from the Jews who did know the scripture and had it in their possession. The second point we notice here is these verses are only referring to a group among the Jews in Arabia during the time of Muhammad who were guilty of that action. This is clear again from the same words, "and there are among them," meaning the Jews. This means the Quran is not talking about all the Jews with their scripture everywhere else in the world. In fact, Ibn Kathir in his commentary on this verse mentions them as a category of people among the Jews. The third point we notice here is this particular group among the Jews are known in the Quran as Ummiyun, who wrote a book and claimed it was from God. According to Edward Lane's Arabic English Lexicon on page 92, in Arabic, Ummiyun has various meanings, such as illiterate people, unlettered people, or Gentiles. A Gentile is someone who is not Jewish or not an Israelite. Contextually, the Quran is here referring to Gentile Arab converts to Judaism who were ignorant of the inspired Hebrew scriptures and decided to write a book which they claimed was revelation from God in order to profit from it. For proof this only refers to Gentile Arab converts to Judaism, we turn to Ibn Ishaq's biography, The Life of Muhammad, where he speaks about Quran chapter 2 verses 77 to 78 on page 252, saying, "God said, 'Do they not know that God knows what they conceal and what they proclaim? And some of them are Gentiles who do not know the book, but merely recite passages. They only think they know, i.e., they don't know the book, and they do not know what is in it. Yet they oppose thy prophethood on mere opinion.'" So Ibn Ishaq is saying Ummiyun in this context refers to Arab, Gentile converts to Judaism. Also, Alfred Guillaume, the Arabist scholar of Islam and translator of this biography, has an interesting footnote at the bottom of this page, where he points out that Muhammad himself is called the Gentile prophet, or An-Nabiy al-Ummi, in Quran chapter 7 verse 157. He also mentions that early traditionists identified the Ummiyun as Arab proselytes or converts who did not know the scriptures. And for you Muslims who claim that An-Nabiy al-Ummi really means the unlettered prophet and not the Gentile prophet, I turn your attention to the following Quran translations which agree with me that it means the Gentile prophet. Gentile in this case means an Arab, non-Israelite. And if you ask me about the identity of these Arab converts to Judaism, I will direct you to read pages 246 to 248 of Ibn Ishaq's biography, The Life of Muhammad, where we see indications that people from the Arab tribes of Aus and Khazraj had converted to Judaism. In fact, Shia Muslim sources also identify the Aus tribe as Jews. So now that we know who the Ummiyun are, ask yourself, how could these Arab converts to Judaism change the text of the sacred Hebrew scriptures when the Quran itself says they had no knowledge of those scriptures in the first place? Obviously, they couldn't corrupt any part of the Bible without prior knowledge of its text. The fourth point we notice here is that if the Quran is actually claiming corruption of the Hebrew scriptures, then we are forced to conclude that the author of the Quran is not God, because he was ignorant of the fact that prior to and during the 7th century, accurate translations of the Hebrew scriptures, such as the Codex Vaticanus, were also possessed by Christians elsewhere in the world. He seems totally unaware that Christians also believe in and possess the Old Testament scriptures. In addition, the author of the Quran was completely unaware that in the future, the Dead Sea Scrolls would be discovered, which include biblical manuscripts in the original Hebrew, which predate Muhammad by many hundreds of years. So, corruption of the Hebrew scriptures possessed by a group of Jews in Arabia certainly does not mean corruption of the same Hebrew scriptures possessed by Jews and Christians elsewhere. So, what should you Muslims conclude about Quran chapter 2 verses 78 to 79? What is your Quran actually saying or not saying about the Hebrew biblical scriptures? Are they corrupted or not? Well, this leads me to my fifth and final point. Here's the answer from your Prophet Muhammad himself. In Sunan Abu Dawood, Volume 5, Hadith number 4449, we read the part where Muhammad says, "I'tuni bit-Tawrat," bring me the Torah. Muhammad then faces the Torah and claims, "Amantu biki wa biman anzalak." I believe in you and in the one who revealed you. And this hadith is graded Hasan or reliable. So Muhammad in the 7th century affirmed his belief in the Torah. This means if a Muslim relies upon the statement of any companion of Muhammad who held the opinion that the biblical scriptures are corrupt, this companion of Muhammad would be contradicting Muhammad himself. Case closed. So, dear Muslims, in closing, you can see Quran chapter 2 verses 78 to 79 does not say the Bible is corrupted. Once the passage is read in its proper context, we discover that it is not speaking of Jews corrupting their holy book, but simply claims that some ignorant Gentiles from the Arab tribes of Aus and Khazraj had converted to Judaism and wrote some other document and claimed that false kitab or that false scripture was from God in order to gain some financial benefit. So I hope that clarifies the issue for you. Thanks for watching, and God.
One of the old questions. There are several answers to this question, but before any answer one should try to understand Quran according to the understanding of Muslim commentaries on sacred Quran. Please see a number of translations of this verse (I'm 6 to 115 for truly and justly has thy sustainers' promise been fulfilled. 102 There is no power that could alter the fulfillment of his promises, and he alone is all-hearing, all-knowing. Asad, perfected is the word of thy Lord in truth and justice. There is naught that can change his words. He is the hearer, the knower. Pickthall. There are some interpretations of this verse. The first interpretation, it means that eternal words which are associated with GD are immutable and unalterable. It is not discussing about the words written in copies. The words written on the copies are not associated with GD. The second interpretation, the word in the context means promises in Prophecies that GD hath made in his sacred revelations can never be changed, and they always as occur as he stated. They could never be changed, they shall never be able to be changed. That means that no one can force GD to change his promises which he did make. Third interpretation: if a change is made in the words or sentences of GD, they cease to be words of GD immediately. So the changed products are neither the words of GD nor the sentences of GD. Now, the verse may be taken that it is impossible that a word or words or a sentence or sentences of GD are changed, yet they continue to be divine words or divine sentences or both. Fourth interpretation: 1. A Yah can particularize another a Yah. So this a Yah can be made particular in meaning and does exclude books referred in the question. This is a common principle of particularization, tuk, sis. There is a dispute whether ASIH tradition of Adi th can particularize a verse in Holy Quran which is apparently not particularized. But there is no dispute 1. A Yah of sacred Quran can particularize another verse of sacred Quran. One thing may be noted, that verses of Quran must not be taken in meanings against the meanings understandings of Muslim commentators. This is extrinsic particularization of the verse. Not all the particularizations are intrinsic, i.e. due to a word in the text of a Yah. Some addition discussion: the phrase words of GD can be understood in at least two meanings. 1. The words spoken by GD himself. 2. The words spoken by GD, written by created rational supposita like human or angelic beings, or recited by them. There's a clear distinction between these two meanings of the expression words of http://GD. In the first case, the self of each one of the word in the words is spoken by GD and continues to exist and never cease to exist, whether it has a subject as substratum or it does not has a substratum as a http://subject.it is immutable and unchangeable in the following meanings. -1. If words are spoken by GD, then they do not cease to exist. Point 2. They are immutable in the following meaning: their mutation is relatively impossible. Point 3. They are immutable in the following meaning: if the word of GD are changed from what they were spoken by GD, they are immediately changed to mere words. From being words of GD and become mere words can never be ascribed to GD as his words. 4. Words of GD as words of GD cannot be changed. Point 5. Even such changes are not in power of human beings, etc. Now, coming to another point, when the very same words of GD are written on paper or recited by human beings, etc., with errors or manipulation, the words cannot be called words of GD. These explanations be obvious meanings that are as clear as they can be. To take the meaning that this verse is talking about the copied words of GD or words recited by human beings, etc., is just a twisting of the very obvious meaning. There is not that can change his words. Which words? Those which are spoken by GD himself, or those which are recited by created human beings, etc., or are written by them, or both? The obvious answer is those which are spoken by God himself. Perhaps it is due to some misconception about the meaning of the word change. Change means that same something should be different now from what it was previously. Aquinas Thomas. So such a change is impossible in the very self of the word that is was spoken by GD himself, but such a change is not impossible in the recitation of divine words by human beings, etc., or writings, copying of human beings, etc. For example, suppose that GD did speak in the beginning, let there be universe. Suppose that the universe came in existence immediately or simultaneously as GD did speak the sentence. Now this sentence, which is spoken by GD himself, did not get annihilated just after GD spoke it. Once spoken, it continued to exist and never ceased. No one created human being has the power to change this sentence and the words which constitute the sentence spoken by GD. But the very same words and the sentence when they were written on paper they were distorted, so the resultant sentence is not the sentence of GD, and the words constituting the distorted and manipulated sentence are not the words of GD. Similarly, if the manipulated text is read by human beings, etc., the text is not the divine sentence, and the words in the text of recitation are not the divine words. However, if the very same text of the sentence is written by humans, etc., or is recited by them only, then the written or the recited text of the sentence can be called sentence of GD or words of GD. Epilogue 1. If the word of GD are changed from what they were spoken by GD, they immediately be changed to mere words. From being words of GD and become mere words can never be ascribed to GD as his words. 2. There's a difference between words spoken by GD himself and recitation or writing of words spoken by GD by human or angelic beings, etc. 3. This verse is not speaking about the copies of divine words made by human beings, etc., or recitations of divine words by human beings, etc. 4. To say that it is saying so is nothing but a twisted interpretation of the simple meaning. 5. This verse is silent about the copies and recitations. To compel the verse to speak about which it is silent through a twisted interpretation or by a twisted way is a distortion of the pure and clear meaning of the verse.